Welcome, everybody, to the SnapRefund podcast. I'm Anise Taylor.
And I'm Cody Eddings.
And today we're joined by Michael Balarezo, CEO of Adjusto, a company focused on transforming all the amazing things that personal property valuation and bringing transparency to one of the most emotionally charged parts of the claims process. We're going to be diving into what it takes to rebuild trust in claims, how structured valuation changes outcomes, and what the future of personal property claims should look like. Michael, thanks for being here. What has personally shaped the way you think about loss and the responsibility insurance carriers in that moment?
Sure. Thanks. And first, I just want to say thanks, Anise, and thanks, Cody, for having me on. Huge fans of both of you, and can't wait to get this rolling. So let's just dive right in. So on the first side, because there's kind of like two sides to this answer. The first is, my experience as an adjuster, really helping someone navigate a loss, kind of taught me that there's like two parts to that part of the role. One is operational. It's very mechanical. You kind of have to, like, let's say, look at the policy and understand exactly how you need to work a claim, because every single adjuster is required to at least understand the policy language. And then that's basically like your set of guiding principles for what you can and cannot pay for, what you can and can't do, right? But then the other part is really embracing empathy and putting yourself in the policyholder's shoes to understand what it is that they're kind of going through, right? And you can be sympathetic to a policyholder and help them navigate. That is your job as an adjuster, is to basically help them navigate the loss, so you can get them back to where they were before the loss, and then they can carry on with their lives. But on the flip side, the other thing that kind of helped me personally shape the way I think about loss is experiencing my own catastrophic loss as a policyholder. And that was very eye-opening, because I remember what it felt like to be an adjuster, going through the operational and the mechanical bits. And there are certainly operational and mechanical bits that you have to navigate as a policyholder, like itemizing every single one of your items, providing receipts, right? But it just feels different, because on the adjuster side, your mechanical and operational bits are more detached, whereas on the policyholder side, you're very attached. These are your things. And so as you're documenting them, they bring up memories, right? And then you kind of have to pause for a little bit, and you kind of like just sit in that moment, kind of remembering things that you had or lost. And policyholders are certainly a variable in the amount of time it takes to resolve a loss. And now I get it, right? As an adjuster, I was kind of waiting, like, when is this policyholder going to submit like their list of scheduled items? And as a policyholder sitting down, like, I get it. I was like, sometimes it just takes time. Like, you have to go through like a grieving process, right? And it is a part of navigating a loss. And so I think I kind of frame like our solution from both of those lenses, because we understand what adjusters have to navigate, but then also what policyholders have to navigate. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, personal property losses, the significance that can have in someone's life can't be missed. There's so much that goes into having to pick up the pieces when something goes wrong, and obviously that's going to look a little different for everyone. So as you're going through this process, I'm curious, what specific breakdown in the flow there, the operation, was the aha moment, if there was a single moment that gave you that let you know that Adjusto needed to exist?
That's a great question. And I remember there's like two moments. I remember this so vividly in my claim. And for one, I just want to call out that like the process of navigating a claim, a large loss specifically, is taxing, right? For everyone, for adjusters and for policyholders. There's no easy way out of this, right? At least not today. And we're certainly building software to aid in this exhaustive process. But the thing that I remember at first was going through my settlement which was like 60 or 70 pages. I can't remember. It's this massive document. And the very first item, it was like just way off, right? In terms of what I expected the value to come back at. And I provided data, I provided receipts, I provided websites, I provided everything. And you could see where some of the valuations for some of the items were exactly like spot on. But then like on a few others, ones that I really wanted to pay attention to, they were far and away not even close to what I expected to receive in terms of an initial cash value, like an actual cash value for my initial payment. And that's when I realized it's not that the adjuster isn't trying to do their best job. They absolutely are. But then it hit me that maybe that the tools that they're provided don't provide them with the ability to provide personalization at scale, right? And that's what I was expecting as a policyholder. It's like, hey, I've been paying my premium for like over a decade, right? And now I finally have this loss, and I'm expecting white glove service, and I know what's going to happen, right? This is a catastrophe, right? It's a catastrophic event. There's thousands of other folks, and adjusters are trying to work all the claims that they possibly can. And so things sometimes slip through the cracks, and it's really difficult to pay that much attention to any one claim. And so that's when it hit me. I said, wouldn't it be great if there was a way where we can help adjusters make policyholders feel like they were heard at scale, right? And so like that is a very difficult challenge to do, because it's not just a valuation problem. Like that has its own problems. That is a very, very tough problem to solve. But the other part is, how do you build that connection so that people feel like you're doing your best job? And so as an adjuster, right, supporting the policyholder through their claim. And then the second part was like at dinner. I remember, and I've told this story, and I tear up a little bit sometimes when I tell it, but like it's very true. I was at dinner with my wife and my daughter, and we found out that night that we were going to move back into our home. And my wife and I decided to take my daughter out to her favorite place to eat dinner. And we tell her the news at dinner, and we're expecting her to jump out of her seat, and she just completely broke down. This is like at the time she was about 9. And so here's a human, a person, a 9-year-old person, a child who had to also go through this loss without her things for 2 years as we kind of navigated this whole thing as a family. And she just broke down into tears. And I'm thinking, man, as much as we try to shield her from this experience, like we did our best, and it is still painful. And so at that moment I thought, well, how could we help ensure that no other family has to go through something like this? Right? There must be a better way. And so that's when I knew that there was something that we could do about it, and that we should do something about it. And that's literally what sparked the whole idea of Adjusto.
What made your daughter cry?
I think it was like a little bit of, it's a great question. It felt like the weight of the claim just left her shoulders. Like, I like to think they were happy tears. They weren't all happy tears, right? You can tell. But I feel like she was overwhelmed with the fact that it's finally over, right? I can finally move on with my life, right? And, she saw mom and dad in the background, arguing over stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot for anyone to process, right? And so, yeah, and so that was our moment, and that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back for me. That was a very powerful moment. And so I just want to make sure that we're building something to help move insurance forward and to support people on both sides, because it's not just about the policyholders. They're certainly important, but the adjusters are also there. They're humans too, and they need software that helps them show up at their best every single day.
Yeah. When I hear that story, it really makes me think of one of the reasons why we got into the insurance industry, SnapRefund, was because of the human cost and the real damage that people were feeling during different personal property losses, right? The emotional and the complexity of it was just so really harsh. And insurance is supposed to really give you a peace of mind. And here you are going through these different scenarios where it actually does the opposite. And it's what really stood out to me about what you do at Adjusto. If you had to point something out, what would you say is it that the industry does that they consistently get wrong in handling these personal property losses?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things I can add to this, right? First of all, personal property claims are very vast, right? They, some of them are very low severity, meaning it's like just an item, right? It's an iPhone, right? Maybe someone dropped an iPhone or lost it on vacation, right? That's not really emotional. It can be annoying, right? And you kind of you make your way to like the cell phone store that afternoon. You can buy a replacement, and then you submit the receipt to your carrier. They will, refund you the difference, or whatever the structure ends up being with your specific carrier. Other contents claims are emotional, right? You could lose your whole house, right? In a fire, in a flood, in a hurricane, in a tornado. And I think the thing that the industry really hasn't, let's say, adapted to is understanding the level of variance in how you handle each of these claims, right? And providing adjusters with tools to navigate that spectrum, right? And there is a time where there might not be, let's say, that much empathy that or trust that needs to be built, right? Let me rephrase that. Trust always needs to be built, but let's say on the empathy side, going back to the cell phone bit, it's like, hey, I'm just going to help you go ahead and replace your cell phone. It looks like everything's good to go. Yep, we're going to go ahead and approve this claim. But on the other end, for some of these larger losses, how do you help adjusters show up every day with insights so that way they can build the rapport, the trust that's needed to help someone navigate this? Again, because it's also very complicated, right? You're dealing with emotions. You're also dealing with people who might be grieving, and they're at different stages of their grief life cycle as well, right? And so you kind of need to understand the dynamics of the claim to work it properly. And so, and I kind of boiled this down into also some of the things that we've discovered in the research and speaking with policyholders, like what's important to people today. And I think if you ask carriers, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was speed. Let's just close out claims as fast as possible. And they're not wrong, right? People like fast payments. What we ended up finding in a lot of our research was that people are willing to give up a little bit of speed for accuracy. That is important, right, to people. Like, I would much prefer to make sure that my claim is worked thoroughly than to get an immediate payment tomorrow and find out that it's not to my expectation and that I actually have to do a lot more work, right? And then we extend the cycle time, the claims themselves. And so we have this saying at Adjusto. It's an acronym. It's called STAT, right? It's speed, transparency, accuracy, and trust. Mm-hmm. And so speed, given. We need that today. People expect it out of all services. Transparency, this is the new thing that policyholders are demanding because they want to understand how valuations are set. That then leads to accuracy, and the accuracy bit is a little bit different than the way that it was previously positioned. I've heard this before in different carrier organizations, which is like the price of a shoe is the price of a shoe is the price of a shoe. And that's not necessarily true, depending on the shoe. And we live in a world where like a collector shoe can be worth an insane amount of money, right? But at its base, it's still, let's say, a Nike SB Dunk, right? That you could probably get for $160. But in reality, there's other factors that might increase the value of that. And so accuracy not only is from the perception of the insurance company, but from the perception of the policyholder, right? And so that's like a whole nother twist. And when you take those three ingredients together and then you build that into a system, then you're earning the ability to build that trust, right? Those are like the building blocks of trust, right? So speed, transparency, accuracy, and trust. It's stat.
Why is valuation such a consistent friction point between the adjusters at the carriers or the TPAs managing claims and the policyholders or the claimants who are having their items valued?
Right. I think it goes back to the statement that we mentioned earlier about, let's say, like sensitivities, right? Like even in my experience going through a claim, right, where there's this detached versus attached, right, dynamic. As an adjuster, you're kind of detached, but as a policyholder, you're very attached. And so let's remember these things. These are items. They belong to people. It's a part of their lives. Like they chose these things to surround themselves with so they can go through life, right? And so some of these things have significance, some of them don't. And I think there's this perception of value that is very black and white for some items, and for some items it's just not, right? And this happens a lot, right? Especially with items that happen to be like heirlooms or sensitive to individuals. Like that becomes a very difficult problem to solve, right? Because there's this perceived value that certain items are irreplaceable, but then at the same time the insurance company has to pay you for it, and they have to figure out how to pay you for something, right? And they do their best to find the best appropriate match. And so I think it comes down to education. Like I think this is one piece that policyholders would greatly benefit from early on in the claim, and how adjusters handle that education, right? I'll give you an example of the worst thing, right, that someone could say. And this actually happened to me in my claim, and I heard this, and this was very interesting to hear because I heard it as a person speaking to their adjuster, and then processing it as a policyholder, but then remembering back in my adjuster days, oh, this is probably like the 13th claim they've worked today, and it's only noon, right? And so they opened up saying, hey, I'm so-and-so, just want to let you know you're probably not going to get everything you want for your claim. And I'm just like, whoa, that is a terrible way to open, right? And I said, look, I understand. Like, I'm not here to basically take advantage of the situation, right? Like, this is me. Like, we're going to work through this together. But I could understand why an adjuster felt like they had to say that, right? And I think it goes because of this whole dynamic between what is significant, what is not, why there's a difference between how policyholders feel in their valuation of items. And all I believe that adjuster was trying to do was just say, like, hey, like there's going to be things that you're probably going to be surprised about the process, right? And I think that's fair. But if there's a more standard way that we could educate people, like at the very beginning, on how to handle some of these larger losses specifically on the policyholder side, I think things might go a little bit smoother.
Yeah. And you're really doing it. You know, Michael, from the first moment I talked to you and the vision that you had, I mean, it was really a specific vision that you had in really transforming the lives and helping adjusters do their job. Can you talk us through your technology? Talk us through the Adjusto technology. You know, really, what is it? How is it implemented? What do you do? And then let's also talk a little bit about your design technology that you guys are designing that really empowers the adjusters instead of replacing them.
Yeah, that's a lot, right? And so let me break it down, right? And so we'll start off by just saying, I think we need to service the operational tasks, but get away from just automating an operational task for automation's sake, right? There's this whole idea, especially with artificial intelligence coming to the foreground, where, and at least we certainly believe this at Adjusto, which is ultimately you need to kind of reimagine and redesign experiences in software, artificial intelligence provides a wealth of information and access to insights. It matters now more like, how do you design an experience to leverage that information, right? And so for us, we went really deep into building a platform that can be used by multiple different parties: policyholders, adjusters, TPAs, anyone who essentially supports carriers in contents claims. And it at the very early stages, we wanted to make sure that we were able to solve, to the best of our ability, in a way that no one has done yet before, this valuation conundrum, right? This paradox of like these two parties kind of figuring, like, disputing values. So we did a lot of research. We consulted with several folks on at certain universities who study behavioral economics, other folks who have worked insurance claims, other folks who had led insurance teams at the C-suite level, policyholders, and just average people who don't even have insurance policies, to get their understanding. And so what we've an understanding of contents and value. And so what we've decided to do was we built an algorithm. It's a patent pending algorithm. It's an AI engine, we call it, that uses adjuster heuristics and policyholder data that we've collected to end up figuring out like how to appropriately find the most appropriate item to resolve a claim, right? And it outputs values that are weighted towards a consumer's understanding of an expected value for a thing, right? A lot of solutions today, at least that we've observed, take the position of providing the lowest value match by default. And there's, like, understandably so, and insurance is here to pay what we owe and what they can prove. But in our position, we really want insurance companies to understand and put their best foot forward to their policyholder and say, like, hey, we've done all the work and we've effectively done all of this diligence to find the most appropriate match. And to a consumer, that it just feels a lot different, especially when, like, everyone has one of these. It's a cell phone in their pocket today. And so you have, like, the world's greatest fact-checking device, right? And a policyholder can instantly, just on their phone, just fact check something. And so we want to make sure that when they do, it is at least in alignment with what they would expect, and also with what an adjuster would also agree with as well, right? And so the underlying tech stack is built with a ton of different models that we leverage. We've also trained a handful, everything from vision AI to audio transcription services, to like large language models, and we've even tuned some of these as well. They work in orchestration together, right? So it's a very sophisticated system that outputs matches, but then also does like a host of other things for adjusters as well. Like we like to say that we automate about like 95% of the workflow.
So let's fast forward to maybe a very near future. If Adjusto fully achieves its mission, what will feel fundamentally different for these policyholders or these claimants that are going through a loss?
Ooh, I think, Anis, you kind of alluded to this earlier in one of your questions or leading up to it. And I think the thing that will feel different is, instead of a policyholder like today, especially on a large loss, right, feeling overwhelmed, they would feel comforted, right? Imagine like having such a large loss that then your carrier calls you and says, hey, don't worry, we got this, and here's your payment. And we're very confident that we can pay this to you. And it's in like record time, right? We're not talking weeks. We're not talking months. We're talking like maybe days, even same day, right? That's the future we want to build. And there is a path to get there. It requires a lot of work, not only on the claim side, but then also on the underwriting side. So we spent a lot of time building this platform to essentially build the infrastructure and the data layer for contents to work end to end across the entire ecosystem, right? So we're going from overwhelmed to comfort.
I see. That actually sparks another question of mine. So as I think through that, you're primarily, from a perception standpoint, at least from the carrier, I would imagine they're viewing you as a claims tool, but maybe there's an underwriting angle here that's more central to the message. But I'm curious, you probably face a lot of the same questions that SnapRefund faced in the early days, which is people asking, well, like, okay, why do we want to change the policyholder experience, tangibly for the better during a claim? Like, what does that matter for us ROI wise? So what would you say to those carriers or venture capitalists who might ask you what kind of ROI they could expect to see from helping policyholders earn more back closer to the accurate value of their goods?
So there's a lot here, right? We know the three variables that are very important to claims organizations. It's indemnity, loss adjustment expenses, and premium earned. And the way that we keep premium earned and keep coming in is by delivering exceptional service. So that way policyholders don't churn, right? Speaking with a lot of carriers, there's a lot of focus on the operational side, right? It's not so much about getting rid of folks because there's a lot of projections on how some carriers, and certainly many carriers, are going to continue to expand and grow over the next few years. It's about making sure that they can stay lean, right? And so there's a massive cost associated with hiring more people. We're also very aware that we're in a time where there's an increase of catastrophes year over year. Last year was kind of, some people would say, well, what about last year? Right? It was kind of an anomaly, but if you look at the weather data, it projects it like up and to the right over the past 10, 20 years. But then you pair that with the fact that there are fewer adjusters in the future, or at least in the coming future, because there's a big tidal wave of them, let's say, leaving the workforce. And so you have fewer adjusters, you have more potential for claims. And so how do you keep the same operational rigor and deliver excellence at scale? And so that is, to me, a technology problem. That is something that you have to solve with technology. So they're thinking about things from an operational perspective on staying lean. And then I also think on the indemnity side, there's a lot there. There's a lot that our system also does, from fraud detection, and then also just making sure that we can properly indemnify someone, right, and then catch any embellishments that might exist inside of a claim. And so our goal is to address every single one of those three variables. And on the policyholder retention side, that goes back to my earlier point around experience. Like, how do we provide them with an AI-enabled experience that meets them where they're at and at their level of expectation, right? Consumers are using all sorts of amazing apps these days. They're using like ChatGPT. They're using social media apps, right? And so they all have a notion of what like the new bar is. And I think insurance also has to meet that bar with a claimant's experience as well. And we do that through providing an amazing new intuitive experience through our software. And so that's how we kind of address those 3 points for folks looking to understand where the opportunities are in contents.
Yeah, that's really great insight, Michael. One of the things I will also say, as I've gotten to know you, one of the things I was really most impressed with you was at the Guidewire Connection event last year. You got up there and you got to win the whole Guidewire pitch competition, and I thought that was fantastic. And so,
thank you.
yeah, there's a lot of founders out there that can learn a lot from you and within your journey, from ideation to get into where you're at today with Adjusto and continuing to grow the business forward. If you had any piece of advice, what advice would you give founders that are building in the insurance claim space?
Insurance claims are hard.
Just
right?
insurance space,
They, yeah. No,
really,
well,
Tim.
I'm just being real. Insurance
Yeah,
claims are really hard,
yes.
and not to say that any other space isn't, but there's a lot of opportunity in claims if you understand where they are, right? I happen to have my own epiphany going through life as an adjuster, but then also as a policyholder. And it took that entire like 360-degree experience for me to kind of go through before we kind of realized where the aha moment was. But the biggest things for founders, at least in the insurance space or in claims, is to just have conviction and be determined. Understand that the boldest ideas will certainly be met with skepticism.
Yeah.
Right? 100%. I think there's a reason why insurance is so successful. It's been around for some companies like hundreds of years, right? Because they're also really good businesses or good companies. And so they figured something out, right? But that doesn't mean they can't learn something from you. And so be prepared to show data, be prepared to be persistent, dare to go into the weeds where no one is looking, right? And then also have a voice that isn't afraid to educate. Because I think at the end of the day, we're all in this together to help make insurance a more resilient industry for future generations. And the only way we get better is by educating each other and then bringing new solutions to market. And sometimes, especially in claims, it can be a bit challenging because we fight the "that's the way we've always done it" notion. And I think that's also an amazing opportunity, right? Because there's various different ways how we can solve different problems.
Well said.
I wanted to say thank you for coming, Michael. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I always feel like every conversation leaves me a little more educated, a little more worldly in my perspectives on all the different ways that these processes impact real people. And what we do, it's, kind of like a 1A and 1B part of the claim side. So it's just really fun to talk to a founder that's building in such a similar space to our ClaimSnap platform. So I always appreciate it. And I couldn't be more grateful that we had you on the podcast, man.
Thanks again for having me, Anis and Cody. Also very honored to be here. And I'm a huge fan of what you all are doing. Keep doing it and spreading the message of other founders and other folks looking to improve upon the insurance space.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. And thank you, listeners out there, for tuning in for another episode of the SnapRefund podcast. We'll catch you guys later. Peace.
See ya.